Welcome back, or if it's your first time, I'm glad to have you here. I'm Matt Fendora, and you're tuned in to the Choose to Live, Love, and Grow podcast, where we journey together toward becoming the best version of ourselves. Using mind, body, heart, and spirit as the anchors of our podcast, join me as we set sail into the depths of self-discovery, unraveling the interconnected layers that shape our growth. If you resonate with today's conversation, consider subscribing to the podcast. Your support means the world to us and ensures you never miss an empowering episode. Welcome back, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Choose to Live, Love, and Grow podcast, a podcast all about being the best version of yourself through mind, body, heart, and spirit. Today, I'm joined by Jarrod Wilson. Jarrod Wilson is a veteran of the United States Air Force. He spent 4 years serving his country as a crew chief with the responsibility of performing inspections on and maintaining one of the force's largest transportation aircraft, the C-17 Alpha. Upon discharge and during a 3-year stint as a welder and fabricator, he entered real estate school, but did not feel it gave him the opportunities he was looking for in the workforce. He then decided to go to college and started work at the Indiana Department of Transportation. In this position, he planned, directed, and administered real estate and utility railroad operations. With this experience and continued focus on education, it landed Jarrod a new position with the American Electric Power. Today, Jarrod manages the distribution dispatch center for all Indiana, Michigan Power customers and field operations. With Jarrod's work history and passion around leadership, he continues to share his story to leaders and college students within Fort Wayne and the surrounding area. Some of Jarrod's proudest accomplishments include growth with his family, including his wife and kids, changing the trajectory of past family dynamics, and also his leadership by being involved in the community and helping others. What makes Jarrod's heart sing? Growth and sharing his perspective so others don't have to live the same challenges. Without further ado, here's Jarrod. How are you doing today, Jarrod?
Doing fantastic. Thanks for having me today. And that was a good introduction. So couldn't say it better myself, I guess.
Well, I mean, they are technically your words, so
Yeah.
I just did a little bit of rearranging. That's all.
Nope, it's perfect. Thank you.
Really happy to have you on here. You were recommended by a mutual friend that we have, and I got to hear your story not too long ago. So I'm really excited to dive into that and to have that story inspire others to continue working on themselves.
Absolutely.
So my first question is, what made you join the Air Force? Of all the branches, you know, we obviously know which one's the best one, but why did you choose the Air Force instead of the best one?
Actually, this is a really cool story that just hits me deep because it was my dad. I'll give you the forefront. So when I got out of high school, I didn't really want to be in school. I didn't like high school at all. Didn't like any of the education practices, any of that stuff. And I ended up going to alternative school because I just didn't fit in the dynamic of the regular school, I guess, structure. And once I actually went to alternative school, I graduated early. I graduated in 98, but I graduated that January instead of in that June. And I wanted to get out in the workforce. So as soon as I did that, I also had some dynamics that I just wanted to be independent. I wanted to be out of my household at 18. So I moved out and ended up living with 9 dudes in an apartment. And I was working at a tire place. And I was sitting there just going, man, is this what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life? And I actually got a call from a recruiter. And the recruiter, it was like a weird hour. It was like late at night. And I picked up the phone. I actually hung up the phone and was like, nah, I'm not doing that. Well, then they ended up calling back again. And I answered the phone again. And I was like, oh, I'll come talk to you. So I went and talked to the recruiter, did all of that. And through all that, I went home and I actually talked to my dad. And I said, hey, Dad, I'm going to join the service. He's like, no, you're not, because my dad is an Army veteran. And I said, Dad, I need structure. I need to do something. I'm not going to live with 9 dudes and work at a tire place the rest of my life. And he goes, so you're going to go in the military and live with 100 dudes, you know? And I said, I definitely want to do the military. He goes, right, wrong, or indifferent. He goes, if you do choose, he goes, don't go to any other branch besides the Air Force. and I went to the Air Force recruiter, and that's the story that got me signed up for the Air Force.
So you ended up doing, was it just one contract while you were in?
Yep. Yep. Spent my 4 years. I was in Germany, extended for a little bit there. And then when I got home, got out and moved back to Fort Wayne, Indiana.
So what made you get out of the Air Force then?
So there was a lot of things. Is the structure. It had a struggle with my family. Ultimately, I was gone. I was deployed, and when I came home from my first deployment, I actually came home to the house, and my son wouldn't come to me. And when I was trying to help around the house, I felt like a nuisance, and I felt like there was other opportunities when over there to actually be helpful. So I actually redeployed again, and it just was not good for the family, because I was gone. So she was thinking about it differently than I was, because she was home. She was an independent woman. She was doing everything, raising a child on her own. And then I was over in Germany. We were working 12 hours and then also drinking and doing the thing you do in Germany for 12 hours. And the lifestyle just got the best of me. And when I came home, we made the decision mutually to get out and move back to Fort Wayne.
So how did you work through that afterwards? So you made the decision to get out, but how did you actually come together and work through that?
So that was the hard part. I couldn't have done it without Mandy, who's my wife, and she was the one that kind of walked through all the challenges and everything with me. And it was mutual. She's like, okay, you're gonna have to find a job, because we had insurance and everything paid for when we were in the military. So getting out was a struggle. So I had to find a job and make sure that I had insurance and that I was getting a decent wage. And there's a interesting story about that. I have to give praise to my brother, at J.O. Mori when I was in welding fabrication. Is I called my brother and I said, look, I'm coming home. I don't have a plan. I don't know what um, my next job opportunity is going to be. And he's like, well, let me get you an interview. And so I was like, okay. But my dad, on the other hand, said, you will not follow in my footsteps. I will hurt you if you follow in my footsteps. You're going to do something different than your brother and I. And the unfortunate part is my dad worked for the same company as my brother. So when I came home, I actually took that interview. And when I was in the interview, I shared with the owner of the company, or the manager of the company. I was kind of giving him my Air Force experience, just informing him that I was fully engaged. I'm mechanically inclined. I feel like I'm smart. I can learn fast. And as I was finishing up the interview, he goes, Jarrod, I wish I could help you, but we don't have airplanes here. And at that point in time, I turned around and said, look, I said, I didn't tell him this, but in my head, I was like, I made an agreement to my wife. I got to make sure that I can still support our family and do what we need to do. So I looked at him and I said, look, you give me 2 weeks, you put me on the floor, and if I don't cut it, I said, you don't even have to pay me. Just give me an opportunity for 2 weeks. So the nice guy that he was, he gave me the chance, but he put me on one of the worst jobs that you could do in a fabrication shop. So I was cutting steel for 2 weeks straight. So I was wet, metal shavings all over me. I was coming home black and dirty every day and just wore out. And after that 2 weeks, I just excelled from there. They kept me on and they helped me move through it. So I made that obligation to Mandy, and we were able to stay in Fort Wayne. We had to live with her dad for 6 months, but we made it through that time frame. Ended up getting getting into a duplex and paying our own rent. And then just to add to that question, is that's been our agreement ever since, and we've been really candid with each other about our relationship and open to what challenges we've had. Because later on, up around $18 an hour at JO Morey. And then when I had the opportunity to go to the state, the Indiana Department of Transportation, I had to take a pay cut from 18 to $12. And we were in the duplex. I had my son, and we jumped in again with her support and my, I guess, my motivation to be successful, because I wasn't going to fail, because I made that promise to be a better husband and be around for the kids and all that stuff for her after the military.
How do you think it felt during that time, the stigmas that were around men and sharing those types of situations with somebody else? How do you think that had some sort of impact on yours and your wife's situation?
I do. I think I still do. Even you can tell in the hesitation and some of the conversations that I'm having now is I'm a pretty open book, but at the same time is there's some ego to it. You don't want to talk about the challenges you had in full detail because you're worried about the judgment. And I think that is I think it's getting better, but I don't think it's to a point where you don't think about, hey, when someone hears your story, are they going to disengage from you? Are they going to come closer? And over my time, the reason I have got more transparent and I've grown a little bit around that, and I probably don't give all, but I'm better than I was, is because I've seen people like yourself. I've seen people like our mutual friend Tish, um, kind of just appreciate that and bring people in and help other people tell their story and walk through some of those things. So I'm still a work in progress, but just even like today, it's one step closer to helping others know that it's okay, but also the growth in myself to be able to tell my story and get more transparent and open about it.
I think that's a great example showing that there is support out there, and that yes, there is that stigma that people are working through to try to eliminate, but there's also support out there for people wanting people to make the change in their life to be that best version of themselves. And that does require that, those moments of vulnerability where you don't know what's going to happen. Whatever you say, hey, it could get taken left, it could get taken right, who knows?
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of times, the most impactful people have stories that shape them and put them on the path to inspire others. What was that story for you?
I think the story came from just, I think I'll say it started growing up, because I've actually had this conversation more now than I have in the past. Is a lot of people think about their childhood and how they were raised and all of those things. And my parents were together for 48, 49 years before my dad passed. And it wasn't the best relationship, but it was normal to me. There was alcohol in our family, sexual abuse in our family. And it was that thing that when I was growing up, I looked up to my dad because he put food on the table. He was a hard worker. And at the same time, um, my goal was to actually sit belly up to a bar with my dad and have a drink. And that day when I turned 21, that was the exciting moment for me, that I could, drink with him at a bar or go to the neighbors and stand in the garage and have beers with him. And um, with having my wife Mandy, is until probably late, because growth comes at different times, is we started having conversations and she's like, do you know that your childhood wasn't normal? And this was all stemmed from us going to counseling, and which is another stigma, right? But we started working on ourselves, working on our marriage, and also individually, and having those conversations. And when the the person's talking to you and like, yeah, I'm glad you're having these conversations because this isn't normal. But I guess to get to the answer, what has changed me is I started seeing that I was I was driving for those things. So some of my best stories with my father were drinking stories. And once I went in the military, it put some structure, but drinking still got in the way with my relationship with Mandy. And um, even when I got out, is my work ethic was second to none. It never impacted that. I wouldn't, it was always the partying, like on the weekends and doing those kind of things. And when I finally realized and understood that, hey, if I start making changes in my life, I can impact other people. So when I got out of the military and had those hardships and started working through J.O. Maury, and then I got you to NDOT, is I started seeing, hey, how can I start impacting the community? How can I start volunteering? How can I go back to school and be better for myself so I can actually share my knowledge with others? And it was all that reflection and growth through all of that. And I like doing stuff the hard way. So I couldn't do anything the easy way. I had to trip and fall and bust my face and get back up. And once I realized that I had kids that were looking at me like I looked at my dad, I wanted them to not look to me and think about if I'm their hero, how do I want to impact them? And that's when everything changed. I quit smoking, I quit dipping, I quit a lot of things right when I got out of the military, but I still drink on weekends and stuff like that. And not till recently, a couple years ago, I stopped drinking because I wanted to be that direct influence for my family. And the cool, proud dad moment that comes out of that is my son made a bet when he was like 10 or 11, and he said, Dad, for $100, I won't drink when I'm 21. He just turned 22 and I owe him $100. Like it's amazing because I've instilled being the best version of yourself and all those things that can come in and challenge you, you don't need them. And so that's kind of the transition was probably right after the military and moving through that.
Well, I just want to say kudos to your son for making it that full year, making that bet at 10 years old and still following through with that, knowing this is who I like. He had that idea already of this is who I want to be. And on top of that was because of your influence on him.
Yep. And I give a lot of credit to my dad because he taught me a lot of things, good things like work ethic, making sure you're paying the bills, doing all of that stuff. But at the same time, he taught me a lot of things not to do as well. And of course, I didn't take those at first. I learned the hard way through my 20s. But once I kind of stepped back and um, it took me, finding God and getting focused on the on what we're here for. And I even got baptized for the first time, I think when I was 29 or 30. I don't remember the exact age, but it was that transition of just finding myself, reflecting, and understanding that I like doing stuff the hard way and I need to quit doing that.
Unfortunately, that is the way sometimes we have to learn. We have to learn by making mistakes and getting messy and figuring it out from there. So I want to shift the conversation a little bit into one of the things that you mentioned that is one of your proudest accomplishments is being an active leader and being involved in a community and helping others. Where did that inspiration come from on the topic of leadership?
So I want to say that started early. I just didn't know how to use it. Um, I've always had that leadership side. I was just taking actions and stuff that didn't align with leadership. And so I felt like in the military, I was really good at leading. And I mean, I was helping on the flight line and doing stuff and managing my own plane and doing all those things as a young airman. And there was a lot of trust in me, and I had it, um, but I didn't know how to use it or how to impact anybody. And I tell a lot of people, I was just a straight, uh, I won't use Jarrod words, but I was just a straight butt. Like I was just I was very direct. I was pointed. And you got you know, prompted for that or congratulated for that. It was like, oh, you're doing good because you're a pain, and and I use that as that's my leadership style is being a pain. So, but once I got out of the military and I had to humble myself quite a bit, and there was a lot of opportunities there because, like I said, I like learning the hard way. Is working at J.O. Mori, it allowed me to continue that, is being direct to the point, and it was a rougher crowd, to work with, and I was the same. I was in alignment with them. And then when I went to the state of Indiana, it was a whole different ballgame. It was people that were professional that worked on, projects, and it was like a different way of thinking about stuff. And I tried to transition that same work management model in, and it was funny. He was one of the oldest tenured guys there, and he came up to me. He goes, "You're just a young punk. I'm not going to listen to you, but I'm going to do my job. I'm going to do it good, and you just leave me the hell alone." And at that point in time, it was like, okay, if he's perceiving me that way, how can I get past that? And by the time he retired, which was about 3 years later, and I actually moved AP at that same transition, is he goes, "You were one of my best bosses that I've had." And that hit my heart, because it was like, man, just 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, you were telling me I was a punk kid, right? And then now you're telling me that you really enjoyed working with me. And it took, the focus on asking questions, understanding where they're coming from, how can I help them and not tell them. And then that transitioned into more, because once I got that, like someone put a little fuel on that fire, it all started from there. I got to go to AEP. I started volunteering at JA because our company is very good about getting you out in the community. And so it gave me these little tastes of things. And I was like, man, I really want to just get involved in the community and do more for the community. And that's the one thing that another thing my dad taught me, and my mom, is my dad followed the work and moved around from state to state. We lived in 4 or 5 states by the time I was 10 years old. And so my brother and sister are older than me, so they had to do more of that. And I was like, I want a foundation. I want to build a foundation for my family. I want to be involved in the community. So if there's something that I can help other people with, or we need help on something, it takes a village, right? So how can we build that community stronger and be a part of that? And that's been my focus ever since that time.
If you could sum up your leadership experience in the Air Force, what would one major lesson be for you?
Humble yourself. Just because you can run over people and get stuff done doesn't mean you're a leader.
Yeah. So one of the leadership things that you're involved in is First Fridays. So for those who don't know what that is, can you explain to the audience what is First Fridays and how did you get involved with that?
So First Fridays is a leadership development and networking forum. It's an opportunity for people to come in, learn something new, meet someone new. We do it the first Friday of every month. During the certain season, we take off summer, but ultimately we get speakers to come in, to local leaders, to fulfill your leadership levels. So we've had everything from people's authentic stories to specific leadership dynamics that they brought to the table, and they actually teach on that for about 30 to 45 minutes. And before and after, people get to network and meet someone new and actually expand their reach, and also the people they know. And the way that I got involved was actually by Jerry Johnson. He's one of the founders. Him and Jim ran into me, and people have asked me this probably 100 times of how I met Jerry, and I cannot remember. So I just say it's a God thing. He ran into me in a parking lot. I have no idea, but there was a reason me and Jerry came together, and we just started talking. And he's like, "Hey, my brother and I want to have lunch with you." They ended up having lunch with me and said, "Man, we'd really like you to speak at First Fridays." And they've already done a couple seasons, and I kind of reviewed it and saw what they were all about, and it aligned with my values and where I wanted to move forward with helping out the community. So I did my presentation at First Fridays, and then it's history from there. Me and Jerry have been friends ever since, and Jim, and we play golf together and do all kinds of things. But ultimately, we're each other's faith rock when we need it. We'll text each other just to make sure we're doing good and keep each other in line, you know. But ultimately, he asked me about a year ago to become the executive director of First Fridays, and I accepted that position and made sure I kept him really close. He's trying to weasel out a few things, but ultimately his heart's in it. He's got a passion for the community, so I keep him really close, and he's a really good brother to me. He's helped me out and given me a lot.
That's awesome. Is there one of those lessons of one of the speakers that you guys have had that just really just comes to your mind of this is the epitome of what First Fridays is?
Authenticity. Um, the one thing, and I can say this across pretty much all of our speakers. I know I'm stretching it by saying all, but authenticity. There was Bernie and Paula Kaufman, is they shared their story of just the grind and the work they put in and the failures and falling backwards, but they had each other and just came out and did a really good thing in Fort Wayne. They run out of a jam, and it's amazing that no one knows their story until they came to First Fridays and they got to tell it authentically. And I think that's the one thing from First Fridays that I've learned from everybody is I've got to sit with people that want to come in, and we kind of talk through their presentations and everything. They want to talk about their business and all of those things. And a lot of times Jerry and we stop them and say, "Hey, we just want to know your story, where you work and what your passion is. That's all going to come out. But we want to know how you got there. What were your challenges? What can people learn from your story and how can they get better?" And every single time people come with an authentic message, they knock it out of the park. And I think everybody leaves with a fuller heart at the end of it.
I can attest to that. I remember specifically that one that you mentioned, and it definitely does pull on your heartstrings. You're like, wow, like, and the fact that they were able to not just overcome it, but they did all of that together as husband and
Yeah.
wife and went through all of it together. I think it's just a testament into what our relationship should be as well. In June, First Fridays is holding their Lead Well event. Can you go into describing what that is and how people can get involved with that?
Yes. First, if you want to get involved, reach out to me. Second, I am more than excited. We've done a lot of events in the past, but this one's different. Is I think we think about the greater good, and we put a lot of faith in our leaders, and leaders just have a lot on their shoulders, right? And so this event specifically is focused on you as a leader. And so we're going to talk about the spiritual wellness, the financial wellness, the mental, the physical, and we're just going to pour in. And we've got some phenomenal speakers from across the local area that focus on some of these key elements to just really, I think John Maxwell said it or someone else said it, put your oxygen mask on first before you put on your neighbors when you're on the airplane. And it's like, hey, let's fill you up so you can be the best leader for yourself and help other people out. And so that's what June's all about, is just putting and pouring and focusing on the individual leaders and hopefully taking some weight off of their shoulders, making them better and feel better.
Awesome. And I will make sure that the links to that will be in the show notes. So if people feel inspired to go or get involved, they have all that information in the show notes.
I would love that. Yep, we got flyers out there. You can go to First Fridays, fortwayne.org. You can take opportunities to, even if you want to volunteer, if there's something additional that you want to do to help out, we will take anybody and everybody.
So throughout your life, you've had a lot of things that have happened to you, and through each step of the way, you've continued to push through, persevere, and continue to grow. So at this moment in your life, what is it that fuels you to continue to grow?
So there's three things. One is my faith. Is it's taken me a lot of time to get here, and I'm still not perfect, and I still trip and stumble and mess up, but I know the outcome is going to be what it needs to be for me to understand and grow through it. So my faith, and then second to none is my significant other, Mandy. Is she's been with me. We're going on 24 years, and our marriage has, it is a testament of marriage takes work. It's not just, hey, you are who you are and she is who she is, and you guys just accept it, and whether you're pissed off about it or you're accepting of it, it's a mutual challenge and it's a mutual growth, and you got to over communicate and work through that. And so she's my second one. And then my third one is my kids. Is it's awesome to see my son Hayden and daughter Zoe grow into adults. And there's some things that I've instilled in them that I see them already taking part in. Is my daughter volunteers in the community. She's worked with Tish. She's worked with the Harvest Food Bank. She does a lot of different things. Um, my son has really worked to build his resume out by volunteering and building recommendations from different organizations. And so seeing them grow is something that I never thought would fuel me as much as it does. But now seeing them take on the transition of going from college to work and going from high school to college and really becoming their own person, it gives me more reason to be the best version of myself. So those are the top three.
Those are great answers too. So now that we are coming to the end of the episode, I have three questions in which I ask all the guests. They are over the topics of what this podcast is, which is live, love, and grow. So the first question I have for you is, what advice can you share about how to create a life that leaves a positive impact on the world?
So I'd say put in the work. Is get out there, get involved. It doesn't find a passion of yours or a hobby or something, and just share it with the world. Like just get out there. Um, that would be my number one. I think a lot of times we talk about it or we see it or we say we're too busy or um, other things. And I'll give you an example. Is so there's a power of no. So I want to make sure I preface this statement with that is don't overwhelm yourself and make sure you're putting time towards your family and all of those things. But currently I'm working with JA. I'm doing JA for 5 sessions at one of the local schools. And then I worked with the Better Business Bureau on doing scholarships and reviewing 21 scholarship reviews. And then also, well, working with you on the podcast and just making sure that you're getting out there and being involved, but at the same time, align your goals with the people and everybody that has the same mission and vision as you, so you don't feel like you're just doing it to say, look at me. Like do it because you care and be empathetic, because people will definitely see through not being genuine or authentic.
So the second one is, what are some practical ways people can cultivate self-love?
So this is my favorite, and everybody thinks I'm crazy, but I've seen it in books and I've seen it everywhere, but affirmations, like talk to yourself positively, write stuff on the mirror, do your goals on, like, do a goal board or whatever that is, however you want to do it, whether it's in a notebook or you want to do a poster board. But that self love piece is probably the hardest thing. And one of my peers at work, we were actually just talking about this a couple of weeks ago, is a lot of people will, we need to talk to ourselves more and listen to ourselves less, if that makes sense. Because a lot of times when you listen to yourself, it's negative, it's not positive. But if you talk to yourself, how would you talk to other people? How would you say nasty things? Would you undermine them about, hey, oh, you sucked at that? No, you wouldn't. You'd lift them up and you would help them. So talk to yourself. So talk to yourself more and listen to yourself less.
Very well put. So the final question I have is, what is one actionable tip someone can do today to grow 1% better?
I'd say go to your mirror right now with one of those dry erase markers and say, you are a great person, or you are an awesome person, or you're an amazing person. Just write it on your mirror and say it to yourself every morning, because everybody, no matter their story, their background, they're amazing and they're here for a reason. And we can learn something from every single person. And that self love, you can't love others until you love yourself. And that's probably one of the hardest things to do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So how can people connect with you, Jarrod?
So you can connect with me through LinkedIn. You can come to first Fridays of every month, the Lead Well events, and also I'm on Facebook as well. I probably use LinkedIn quite a bit more, and I'm out in the community. Come join me in a lot of our different events. We got First Friday, do a lot of junior achievement stuff, and like I said, there's United Way, Day of Caring, all of those things. There's a lot of opportunities out there, and just get out there in the community, and I'm sure you'll see the guy with white glasses, which I think it started trending now, is I'm that guy.
So how can the audience support you on your journey?
Hey, just ultimately, let's be kind and help each other. So if you run into me, if there's something that you have learned that you want to pour into me, I will listen wholeheartedly, because I want to continue to grow myself and I don't know everything. And anything that you can share with me, growth wise, leadership wise, personal wise, I'm willing to listen, because it just gives me another opportunity to learn more.
Well, Jarrod, I just want to thank you for coming on the podcast with me. You did it very quick after we talked about it. So I'm glad to have that opportunity to talk to you, hear your story, and have that story, hopefully, which it should, inspire others as well.
I appreciate it, Matt. This has been just amazing having this conversation, being able, like, your questions were spot on, made me think, had to dig a little deeper. And I'll continue to work to tell my story and be transparent. And I hope that every single time I get better, someone else learns something from it so they don't make the same mistakes that I did.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Choose to Live, Love, and Grow podcast. I hope you took something away from this episode that you can implement today, just like I did. After doing some research, I found out that in order to be considered a 1% podcaster, you have to make it past episode 20. We are now officially past that. In honor of becoming a 1% podcaster and your continued support, I'm hosting my very first giveaway. It's my way of giving back to you for showing your support. Now, there are 2 different ways to enter to earn a $25 Amazon gift card. The first way is by leaving a review. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, take a screenshot, and send it in via my website, mattfindora.com. One lucky winner will be drawn from this group. The second way is by sharing this podcast on Instagram or LinkedIn and tag me in it. It can be a clip I've shared, your favorite episode, or the episode you're listening to right now. The second winner will be drawn from these individuals. The winners will be announced via email and on April 29th's podcast, so make sure you're following the podcast so you don't miss your name being called. And once again, thank you for supporting me and this podcast. Good luck. No matter what you choose to do, choose to live, love, and grow. Thank you, and have an outstanding day.